It's great to be here today. My name's Gary Fowler, and I am the interim host today for VCTV. And today we're going to be talking about impact investing and VCs. And it is with great pleasure that I have my esteemed panel, Harsh from Our Ventures, Fabio, my friend from Golden Eagle, and of course, me. My name is Gary Fowler, and I'll be your host. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've done 17 companies and 2 unicorns. I am the CEO, co-founder, and president of GSD Venture Studios, a premier AI and quantum venture studio located in Silicon Valley. And with that, Harsh. Harsh?
Hi.
Hey, I'm not sure where we're going there with the camera, but go ahead. You're next.
So I was actually moving a bit with my camera. So anyways, just a short intro about myself. I'm a venture partner with Our Ventures. We help startups raise funds all the way up to, starting from $200,000 to up to about $10 million. That's the typical sweet spot. Mostly we prefer Asian and Middle East kind of companies, but we do, occasionally explore Western companies as well. Additionally, I'm also a founder of Startup Hackers. It's basically an early stage mentorship and support group for startup founders who can test their ideas, test their pitches, get the initial customers for their the initial prototype. We do all of that in Startup Hackers. So we are trying to help early stage companies get the initial customers so that they can scale it further to the next level.
Excellent. Thanks, Harsh. Fabio. Hey, Fabio, I have a question for you. I've always wondered how you pronounce your last name because that is a mouthful.
Yeah, well, it's actually easy if you resort to a trick. You break into 2 parts. Scacciavillani.
Scacciavillani. I feel like I should be having lasagna or something. Fabio, I get hungry. It sounds like some great restaurant.
Fettuccine Scacciavillani. That's the new fashion in New York restaurants.
Wow, I'm getting hungry thinking about it, I got to tell you. So tell us a little bit about yourselves, Fabio.
I'm an economist by training. I have a PhD in economics from the University of Chicago. My early career has moved from the International Monetary Fund to the European Central Bank, then to the private sector in the research department of Goldman Sachs in London. And then I followed the money. I moved to the Arabic Gulf during the oil boom, and I worked for public institutions and sovereign wealth funds in Qatar first, then Dubai, and lastly in Oman as a chief strategy officer of their sovereign wealth fund. Over the past couple of years, I've become partner of a boutique investment bank in New York called Golden Eagle, with offices in Dubai and Hong Kong under the brand Amintad. And what I do is to help innovative companies to raise funds on the OTC market, over-the-counter market in New York or on NASDAQ Capital. I'm in the process of setting up also an impact investment fund in Italy, and that's in a nutshell who I am and what I'm doing.
Excellent. Thanks, Fabio. Amit?
Sure. Thanks, Gary. Look, my career is really quite diverse and interesting. It's in 3 chapters. So I grew up in India. I worked for about 14 years in the CPG space. Started my career with a company called Indian Tobacco Company. That's a subsidiary of British American Tobacco. And after which I worked with an Italian coffee company called Lavazza Coffee and built them in South Asia with a focus in India and the Middle East. And my last leg of CPG experience has been in a company called Pernod Ricard. That's one of the largest alcohol beverage manufacturers in the world. Started my career with them heading their Scotch portfolio and then kind of was the head of mergers and acquisitions for them. After which, for a short while, I worked with the Boston Consulting Group in the management consulting space. I relocated to New Zealand. That's where my chapter 2 of life starts. I've built a successful consulting firm, management consulting practice that I started from New Zealand in Auckland and then scaled up to 4 countries, namely, the UAE, kind of the United Kingdom, as well as Australia, along with New Zealand, of course, where it started. From 2020, I've been engaged in building an impact fund that invests in alternative proteins and alternative dairy ventures. And the real purpose of the impact fund that we've set up, it's a $50 million fund, and we generally take investment interest in late seed to early Series A, So we are not really bootstrapping startups, but we are more scale-ups. The idea of the fund is to drive 3 clear agendas. The first being obviously climate change. The second being equal employment opportunity. We are trying to bootstrap as many women-led ventures. And the third aspect is food security. So we are very well aligned with the 17 SDGs of the United Nations and trying to do the best we can in that space. So that's pretty much me.
Okay, Amit, you said something. I just want to figure this out. You said you oversaw Scotch. So that was one of your...
Yeah, so in Pernod Ricard, I used to head the international Scotch portfolios. I was a brand head for a brand called Chivas Regal, Glenlivet, and Royal Salute, which are very popular brands by Pernod Ricard. It's a French company.
I feel like I need a glass with a little ice right now.
yeah, I can understand that, mate. Yeah. We all do.
For having Glenlivet a few times.
Yeah. Awesome, mate.
So, Nathaniel, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey guys, can you hear me? Am I audible?
We hear you. Go ahead. Tell us about yourself.
Awesome. My name is Nathaniel Olatomi. Out of Lagos, Nigeria, and regional head of LATOKEN in Lagos, Nigeria, and Africa. I've had some experience into the sales, marketing, and biz dev in tech, healthcare, and also fintech. And I'm glad to be co-hosting with you, Gary, and learning a lot about impact investing.
Sounds great. Good to have you here. So let's get down to it. Let's talk about what is impact. So Fabio, what is impact investing? Fabio, you're on mute.
Yeah.
I feel like one of those movies from a long time ago. You're on mute, Fabio.
You're still on mute. Yeah.
Yeah. Harsh, go ahead.
Sure. So typically impact investment, as you must be familiar, it kind of refers to social sectors focused, right? Where we're trying to, especially in countries like India and Africa, we're trying to promote women education at the early stage, for ensuring education for little children, or maybe it is to kind of put a better healthcare penetration across tier 3, tier 4 smaller towns, or focuses on healthcare development, education, water cleaning, because majority of population in India and Africa, they still don't get access to clean water, right? Something which in the urban areas is kind of taken for granted, but in the smaller towns, you don't get access to that. Access to other infrastructure facilities like electricity and those kind of facilities, right? So just about 2 weeks back, the western side of India was hit by a very powerful storm, right? So there are some areas within some geographies which were there, they had literally no electricity for 24 hours. And some of them didn't have that for 2 days. So that's the kind of situation, right? So impact investment typically focuses on, core grassroots infrastructure providing to those underprivileged segments of the society, but they get access to that kind of facilities, essentially.
So Harsh, but is impact investing creating jobs? Is impact investing entitlement? Is impact investing, equal opportunity? Is impact investing environmental? I mean, what is it?
Correct. So I would not say about entitlement, because quite honestly, these are deeply underprivileged sectors, right? So I wouldn't say entitlement, but definitely it's creating a lot of opportunities, right? So about 15 years back, there was this project called Shethia done by one of the India's largest conglomerates called Hindustan Unilever. So what that did was it gave employment opportunities to these women in these tier 4 towns and villages, where they could start earning a livelihood. So this is definitely creating a lot of employment opportunities for them, and a kind of a feel good factor as well, right? Where typically, especially in these smaller towns, women typically don't kind of focus on adding revenue to the family or making money for themselves, right? Providing these opportunities to them. So definitely it's kind of completely liberating them and kind of creating the next generation of women as well, who can kind of focus on self development as well, and kind of bring them more inclusive to the kind of urban development which we are seeing in some of the bigger cities like Bombay, Delhi, Bangalore. What is happening is there's a huge rift in the cities. There's the metro cities and tier 1 cities and the underprivileged cities, right? What's needed is a bit of support to those lesser privileged areas as well, so that they can kind of come back into the fold of the entire economy, so that the entire economy gets a huge jump with their help.
Excellent. Thanks, Harsh. So, Fabio, over the last few years, more and more people are talking about impact. So, is it because we finally realized we need to make a dent in the universe because we see populations increasing, we see our environment changing, or we're more compassionate? Why is it becoming increasingly more important?
Well, I think it's becoming increasingly more important because a lot of institutional investors, and I'm thinking of pension funds, university endowment, but also family offices, have developed this sensitivity to social issues. So the idea is to combine financial returns with benefits for the underprivileged, for the environment, and for many other worthy causes. So it's adding impact investment, it's adding another dimension to the purely profit maximization strategy of many investors. So the way we can think of impact investment is a sort of balancing between pure financial returns and improvement in a broader sense of society. Now, how you decline this twofold objective can be quite variegated in scope and strategy. In other words, some investors might still put as a primary goal the financial returns, and as a secondary goal the impact effect. Others may do the opposite. A third class of investors may balance, so may have a linear combination or some form of combination of these two goals, and then select the investment accordingly. In other words, the possibilities are enormous. The common thread is the measurement of the impact. In other words, the measurement of the improvement that the investment brings to the lives of people. And this measurement is, I would say, the key element of impact investment compared to other forms like philanthropy, charity, ESG, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, but how do you measure it, right? So, and by the way, Fabio, I love it because you can tell you have a PhD. The answer, I felt like I'm back in graduate school again.
Thank you.
But it is, it is about making the dent in the universe in a financial return. But again, how do you measure what kind of impact you have? So you go into some village or you're working with the underprivileged, but how exactly do you measure it?
No, it may not be necessarily, impact investment may not necessarily be targeting, the poor. It might, but it might not. For example, I give you a dimension which might not be so obvious. In Italy, there is a lot of concern about brain drain. So a lot of top professional researchers, technicians leave the country to go work somewhere else. So one of the objectives that institutional investors look at is the reverse brain drain. So they look at the number of people that the investment contributes to attract back to Italy. So that might be one metrics that you adopt for an impact investment fund. Or more, I would say, intuitively, if you invest in renewable resources, you can measure the tons of carbon emissions that you reduce. Other targets might be the number of women which the impact investment contributes to higher. But I would say that the choices are very wide. And the characteristic of impact investment funds is that they set these metrics in the prospectus. So, for example, there might be people who are interested in healthcare, and therefore they, in their prospectus, explicitly declare that their objective is to improve healthcare provision. They might put a number of targets, such as number of underprivileged or non-insured people which are treated, number of serious diseases that are prevented, number of elderly treated via telemedicine, and so on and so forth. So the nature of impact investment is to improve measurably the livelihood of people and declaring the objective in advance in their prospectus. It might be, besides you can operate across a spectrum of sectors, or you can go from venture capital all the way to investing in listed companies. So the possibilities are extremely variegated.
Excellent. Thanks, Fabio. So, Amit, I got a question for you. Are people, when they're doing impact investing, is it because of their heart or because of their wallet? What are they looking for?
I think, that question should be rightly answered, Gary, in terms of who are the people that you're talking about. I mean, there's obviously different stakeholders with different purposes that they do. Typically, when you see family offices, like Fabio was saying, and build on that point, a lot of family offices are really driven by impact. And they take a very long-term view of the situation where they want to drive some of these social and environmental changes that's healthy for the society and healthy for the planet. Whereas your quintessential venture capital funds probably kind of take a measured approach and balance impact versus profitability. So don't get me wrong, impact is important only if it comes with profitability. In absence of profitability, I think you see a lot of venture capital firms kind of shying away from these ventures. So it really matters. On the other hand, if you look at institutional investors, some of those large corporates, I mean, they might do impact investment based on a corporate social responsibility to clean up their image, and many other motives. But typically, you have to see this in context of which stakeholders really investing and what their purpose has been. The people I deal with, I mean, I can only talk about my first-hand experience. I deal with a bunch of family offices and few sovereign wealth funds, and both of them have very diverse interests, the way they see investment and what they want to do with it. So quintessentially, family offices want an kind of impact because they're really driven. So for example, in my venture, we invest in alternative food companies. So looking at the companies from sourcing the raw materials, so where it's very important for us to have fair trade practices. So for example, let's take an example of a plant protein. Now, one of the ingredients that goes into plant protein is either soya bean or chickpeas. From where the soya bean is sourced from the farmer, and is the sourcing process ethical and fair trade, to right down to processing that material in terms of the food processing, so that is that a very sustainable method, or is it emitting carbon, or is it carbon neutral, right down to a hyper local approach. That is it all about a centralized supply chain out of China that's going to emit crazy carbon in the atmosphere, or is it going to go more towards the consumer and have a hyper local approach and reduce carbon emissions? On the other hand, because you're dealing with plant protein, you're trying to take livestock out of the food chain that's responsible for your majority of greenhouse gas emissions. So you're making dents on various aspects in terms of impact. You're cleaning up the environment, and how we measure that is very, very simple. I mean, there's hundreds and hundreds of frameworks out there, Gary, and God's own truth is even the largest companies in the world don't have an accurate measurement, and that's just the truth. We do a very simple metrics by saying that if we've sold 100 kilos of plant protein, what does that translate into animal protein? And then you kind of calculate how much greenhouse gas emission is an animal responsible for emitting. And that's a simple metrics for calculating that we reduce X amount of greenhouse gas emissions. On the equal employment opportunity side, depending on how many women employment we've created or how many women ventures we bootstrap, it's a really easy number in terms of the impact that you do. So I think there are various ways to measure it, and there are various stakeholders with various different purposes of why they make impact and what really drives them. In my case, I think, I should be very honest about it. Profitability is as probably important as impact. In absence of impact, we don't invest in ventures. In absence of profitability, we don't invest in ventures. So it's really a balance between profitability and impact. But yes, like Fabio says, that if profitability is not going to be the key metric or driver with impact, then it becomes a charity or a philanthropy, which some people do quite well, but we are not in the game of philanthropy and charity.
Yeah, right. It's not sustainable. And you bring up some really good points. I mean, just that one problem in terms of food. By 2050, on the planet, we're going to have to double the amount of food supply. At the same time, the amount of greenhouse, the challenge that we have with animals is about 26% of the pollution today is from animals. So we can't double the amount of pollution. We've got to look at how to be able to have more plant-based protein. So that one problem spans a lot of different areas. Hey, Nathaniel.
Actually, Gary, there are two problems in that. Sorry about interjecting. There are two problems.
Yeah.
Yes, you're absolutely right about the animals. But the second problem is, if you start producing too much plant protein, you need land. That's where plants are produced. So more cultivation means more deforestation. Let's take an example of soybean, which is 80% of the ingredient used in plant protein sources across the world. All the products that are coming out, Impossible, Beyond, you name the brand. Now, soybean is the single most crop responsible for the maximum deforestation in the world. So the more plant protein goes up, the more land would be needed to cultivate the crop. And that, to me, is not sustainable. So what we are kind of seeing today, and we're also investing in, is aspects of cell-based meat, which is lab meat, aspects of vertical farming, hydroponics, aquaponics. That's kind of multiplying quantity in a controlled environment where you can kind of control the production without using too much of land. So I think it's artificial intelligence coupled with that whole goal of trying to be sustainable is what's the outcome and the solution to 2050 or even further down. Sorry to interject, please.
Yeah, I mean, Amit, here's the challenge, right? Let's keep it simple. Remember, I'm a farm boy. We got 8 billion people on the planet Earth today, 8.1 billion. The population by the end of this century is going to be 13 billion. You bring up the area of the deforestation. We're going to still need more land for the people to live on. right? And
Yeah.
then when we go back up, looking another 100 years after that, forecast the minimum 18 billion. So you bring up an interesting challenge. Where are we going to be able to grow? We're going to have to enforce. We're going to have to do things. We're going to have to think differently in order to be able to survive.
Absolutely.
So bring up great points. I love it. Hey, Nathaniel, I got some questions about Nigeria. Tell us a little bit about what's happened in Nigeria with Impact.
Very interesting because I kept going on through this story that happened a couple of years ago in the Niger Delta, where a couple of oil companies happened to pollute the environment in which they were operating. And then it led to a spate of violence, protests, and kidnappings of these oil officials. Now, that's a direct impact of what not being socially responsible can cause to a company. Then it gave them a lot of bad name and bad press. Then it went global. And now you find out that that same company is about to pack up. I think that was Shell or one of these oil companies. And that story is just an example of how negative social responsibility can impact a global brand. And it has cut across a lot of environments. You remember the BP spill a couple of years ago, how it affected marine life and how they were called to pay some fine in billions of dollars. And especially in Nigeria, there's this, or in Africa, there's this like a bicycle attitude a lot of corporate bodies have. And there is more demand by the younger generation to make them much more responsible. So you see smaller clusters of companies taking little initiatives to maybe spend a weekend at the beach trying to clear all the plastic or try to clear all the drainage, little things like this. And it's becoming increasingly popular. And the reason is evident. I mean, every year, the flooding in Lagos State increases. I mean, houses are flooded, cars are carried away, and this has direct impact on the plastic waste that is going up and down around. So there's more calls to corporate bodies to be more responsible because nobody expects the government to be to take responsibility for this anymore. So for me, I feel like most of these companies that take on this task are becoming much more friendly with their community, much more profitable in general because people tend to hire for them and the cost that they drive. And I think it is now is the time for especially emerging countries to take more responsibility, to take more active role in having impact in their communities, not just for existing companies, but for new companies, for sustainability, for good support by the community, and definitely for good press. So
no,
it's a lot. It's a lot.
That's fantastic. And Amit brought up a really good point. The PR value of being an impact investor. I mean, it's almost like you got to check the box today. And I think it's a great thing because you're right. Look at global warming over the last, 30 years. We went from this isn't real to the point we feel the effects of global warming. So absolutely. So let's go down through. What are some examples, Harsh? What are some examples that of impact investing that's working today? And I know Nathaniel's talked about Shell and some of the things that happen, but what are the real examples of impact? And we can say, hey, listen, this is really right. This is working and it's really making a difference.
Correct. So coming back to the original example which I had given, right, Shethia initiative, which was done by HUL, what that did was it gave employment opportunities to thousands of women, in tier 3, tier 4 towns, where they could go door to door selling the products and make commission out of that and on the livelihood, right? It was such a huge initiative. It is actually even featured in Harvard Business Review. That's how effective and how successful it was, a decade ago. So this is an example of how it works, right? And as Amit pointed out, it's different from charity and philanthropy, right? Nothing wrong with that. You can also do that, but if you do it in a profitable scheme of things, it is far more sustainable and people will put more money into that. So coming back to the original thesis, right? So there is this book called Wealth at the Bottom of the Pyramid, written by CK Prahlad, one of the
What is it? Wealth
four,
at the bottom of the pyramid.
that's right, Wealth at the Bottom of the Pyramid. Yeah.
Mhm.
So it's an absolutely amazing book written by CK Prahlad, one of the very notable economists. So the idea is, there's a tremendous amount of wealth which is there. Most of the current products which you see are typically targeting, the same old audiences there, same old educated class which is there, which is, the top 10% of India, or in the case of US, probably like top 40 or top 50%, where we are completely ignoring the remaining population, right? The entire marketing is focused on the top 50%, and the entire way the product is being designed is focused on that. So if we can bring those guys into the fold, imagine the growth in economic GDP which we are seeing across the world. If you look at it, the entire all the economies in the world are seeing huge GDP stagnations, right? They are unable to grow the economy because most of the marketing is focused on a limited audience. They're completely ignoring them, and which is creating a huge internal divide. You look at it, across all the countries. In India, there's a huge divide. In US, even in established economies like US, UK, there's a huge divide, right? So that is how it becomes extremely important to get them in the fold, get them a part of the economy, so that we can truly leverage the skills, the knowledge, not just the money, but even the skills and knowledge is still hiding and it's not a part of the mainstream economy. So just kind of to add on to that, there are a couple of healthcare investments which I have seen in this space. What they've essentially done is they've created these primary care clinics in these small towns and very remote tier 4 towns. You won't even get a proper you'll barely get like one or two buses in a day who will actually be able to take you to those sites. Otherwise, they're completely inaccessible, right? What they do is they've set up primary care clinics over there with virtual conferencing facilities. So if if they want any advanced doctor from say a slightly better city, they can do it through video conferencing, or whatever. If it's the basic care, they can do it over there itself. So these are the kind of investments which we are seeing, and it's been really impressive with the kind of range that they've done. Just about 2 weeks back, in fact, I was pitched a certain proposal like that. Unfortunately, these kind of proposals don't get that much funding, but it's actually extremely amazing how much at the grassroots level the kind of work is being done.
No, that's great. So, Fabio, question: is impact investing working?
Uh,
Or is it a lot of hype?
I mean, we don't have aggregate data at global level or at I would say continental level. I can give you some information from a report that has been done in Italy by the Politecnico di Milano, which is essentially an engineering college and university. Don't ask me why they do this kind of research, but they have a spin-off called Tiresia, which focuses on these impact investment issues. So first of all, it's the number of institutions and funds involved are very few. There is a potential group of about 50 institutions in a country like Italy, which is among the 10 largest economies in the world, and only 38 of them actually are involved in real impact investment. The amount involved are a few billion euro. And most of these institutions, in reality, try to select among the highest yielding, highest return investment, those that have also substantial impact. So impact investment in this regard is a secondary selection criterion. This being said, the interest is growing. The kind of sectors where a lot of investment is concentrated regard renewable resources, because that's easier. It's easier to find investment opportunities, and it's easier to measure the impact. Also, healthcare attracts a lot of attention, but there you have a problem, because healthcare, especially in Europe, involves interaction with the government, with the public sector. So it's extremely difficult to make money, and it's extremely difficult to find attractive investment opportunities. Other areas which are popular, or which certainly attracts the attention of impact investment fund managers are the pollution, so reduction technologies that reduce emission, or, for example, that promote the efficiency of batteries, and some results are already visible, but essentially we are at the beginning of a long process. So the industry, this segment of the financial sector is still in an embryo state. It will take, I guess, about 10 years to have a consolidated framework, to have institutions that attract billions from investors. And so, although the results are not exceptional, the direction has been set, and I would say that the developments are quite satisfactory so far.
Yeah, so Amit, I wanted to go back to one of the points you had, and I wanted to see what you think about this. So one of the deals, we talk about the PR capability, but here's the one, what I think, and I wanted to get your opinion. You know, part of the reason that companies are doing more impact investing is because they're getting called out on it, because they have the ability with the internet, with, you know, bulletin boards, with social media. They're getting called out on their bad actions, and they can't hide them anymore. So I think on that side of it, because they get the negative visibility, they're just getting called out. I mean, I remember many years ago in the hometown where I grew up, they had mine pollution. It would come down off the mountains and killed all the fish. Well, now the situation, if somebody does it, they're getting their cameras out. You know, all of a sudden, hey, look at this company's doing. They'll take a picture of the company. So they're getting called out. What do you think?
Absolutely, Gary. No, you're absolutely right. I think it's a combination of things. Number one, I think the society is getting far more concerned than it ever was. I think the new generation, whatever they're calling it, millennials, Generation X, Z, Y, 2000, whatever you're naming it, I mean, they're getting far more concerned about what's really happening in the ecosystem than we ever got. Number one. Number two, what's obviously happened with technology and the internet and the access to information, that there's a lot of eyes on people trying to kind of pollute, or trying to kind of, dust things under the carpet and kind of imagine nobody to see it. So it's a combination of those things that are calling out some of the largest companies. Unfortunately, so Gary, some of the largest companies that do the biggest philanthropy and the biggest impact investment are also some of the companies responsible for polluting the planet at that level.
Exactly.
So,
That's exactly my point. It's crazy, right? It's like
it's
to do all
kind
this
of
stuff and forget about it.
mate. I mean, that's where, you know, it's a matter to, it's a laughing worthy matter where, you know, at one end they spill the oil, and on the other end they're trying to get these huge programs on women empowerment, on education, the third world focus, going to Africa and sinking billions of dollars. Look, first you know, kind of drain Africa of all their resources, and then you kind of pretend that we care for people. So this is happening, mate. I mean, whether we like it or not, the biggest corporations in the world are behind that. But, you know, just building on Fabio's point, you know, is impact really working? I think you have to see it on a macro level and on a micro level. I personally, what I've been noticing around the world, Gary, impact is really working on a micro level, where communities are driving impact, small changes, whether it's say no to plastic, you know, stop polluting the environment, recycle waste. All that is happening really, really well when small micro communities are trying to kind of do their bit. But when it's about a macro scale, on a larger scale, a country or a continent or a region, I don't think much is really happening, to be very, very honest. Yes, there's a lot of noise, don't get me wrong. People keep, you know, shouting from the rooftop. In terms of investment, it's kind of definitely moving in a positive direction, Gary. I mean, Temasek, which is a large sovereign wealth fund of Singapore, they published a report a couple of weeks back where they said that literally by 2021, this year, they're hoping about over $700 billion to be pumped into impact investment. Now, whether that works or doesn't work, you're yet to see that. But definitely there's a strong move and strong desire towards, you know, kind of making investments in that space. Obviously, a large part of that desire is fueled by great public relation and great PR. And a small part of that desire is genuine in terms of trying to make a difference to the planet.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks, Amit. And Nathaniel, is impact investing working in Africa?
I want to agree a bit with Amit and say that to a micro level, yes, it is on a micro level. On a larger scale, we are yet to see that impact. And the reason why I said this is you just need to drive through major cities and see the heap of waste, the heap of plastic, the environmental waste. A couple of years ago, we had a particular fuel supply from God knows where. That once you put it in your car and you drove out, the whole city just got polluted with this foul smell, right? And it boiled down to one refinery processing this petrochemical. And in the end, a lot of noise was made, but I mean, it still went on for weeks, right? And no serious penalty was taken out. And you see other companies come up and do their own little thing because they know they will get away with it, right? So on a larger scale, you see companies still flouting the rules. But on a micro scale, you see there's this teenager right here in Lagos that takes her own friends to the streets to pick up plastic waste. And then you see a particular school somewhere in Lagos State that collects school fees in kilograms of plastic waste. You know, that's happening on a micro level. Now, imagine if that was escalated to a larger scale. We would not see one bottle of plastic on the road, you know. But then you have to look at what's the incentive to take it large, or what are the penalties? And then, like Fabio was saying, are we measuring the impact these measures are creating? I mean, how do we measure the impact? Those things are still touch and go. But it's great to know that the younger generation are taking much more responsibility, and the onus is on us to support them in any way we can. And to a large extent, I think we're moving in the right direction, but there are still a lot more framework, laws, and policies to be implemented for us to have it in a much more sustainable way. But I think we're in the right direction. We just need to encourage those that are doing well and get more support from people like Amit, you know, and stuff.
Yeah, no, great. Thanks, Nathaniel. So, Harch, we're coming up to the top of the hour. Some final thoughts in terms of impact and what can the VCs do to be able to increase their participation in impact investing?
I could not hear some part of the question. Could you repeat that, please?
Yeah, it sounds like somebody's taking a shower somewhere. How do you, in terms of impact investing, final thoughts from your perspective, and how can VCs become more serious?
Got it. So definitely, as long as there's profitability, you'll definitely see a lot of improvement happening, right? So if you look at it about 10 years past, right, there were a lot of investments which were happening in clean tech and green tech. Unfortunately, most of those investment kind of panned because it was not sustainable in the longer run, right? So what's happening now is slightly modified, slightly twisted, where they are not focusing on complete infrastructure development from ground up, but more on the last mile, on the end side of it, right, where you can see quick results. So those are some kind of innovative things which you can come up with. So as I'm currently working with two startups in the clean tech, green tech space, helping them raise funds. So this is the typical nature which I'm observing over there. If you talk about deep infrastructure kind of development, then the VCs kind of back off. They want to see quick results within like 5 6 years. That's the typical horizons is what they are looking at. So the conventional VCs will always face a difficulty in terms of large scale infrastructure, structural changes. But
Mhm.
if you have, involving clean tech, green tech, and the other impact areas, but which can give you a quick turnaround, say 5 6 years, they are definitely more than keen, because it not only, as Amit and Nathan were pointing out, it's a good PR activity for them as well, right? They can say that they are doing something in the impact space, because these days it's becoming extremely important to focus in the impact space. So that is definitely happening. But additionally, I would say that focus more on the traditional elements as well, right? As pointed out earlier, on the grassroots level, it's going a long way. We are seeing a lot of microfinance institutions as well doing some absolutely phenomenal work in trying to provide banking services to the unbanked populations in small towns, like small countries like Bangladesh and Lagos and other Nigerian countries, right? Those kind of areas where we need to get more institutional investment to kind of make it more mainstream. What typically happens is these micro banks and these microfinance institutions, they typically have like 5,000 customers, 10,000 customers. So they offer the services and they offer the access to that, but it never goes beyond that because they are lacking the institutional funding. So once these institutional players take that more seriously and get it more institutionalized, you could definitely see a lot of progress happening in that regard.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks. And how do people reach you? What's the best way to get a hold of you?
Perfect. So the best way to reach out to me is through LinkedIn. That's the place where I'm most active. Would be happy to discuss any impact investment or anything. If you need any help with with your startup discussion, I'm happy to have that with you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Harsh. Fabio, what are your final thoughts, and how can VCs participate more?
VC is an area in which impact investment can operate and deploy capital. Clearly, there isn't a specific characteristic of impact investment for VC for VC funds. You need to adopt all the criteria and all the techniques of VC to reach the goals of impact investment. In reality, if we want to be a little bit precise, impact investment is the hinges on the VC and private equity methodology to change and improve the society as a whole and the livelihood of the underprivileged or the needy. So, from that point of view, venture capital can be impact investment can deploy funds in venture capital with the objective of, for example, finding more efficient renewable energy technology, or, for example, to find ways to reduce the pollution, or to find jobs for people who do not come from families, from affluent families. For example, one of my key targets is education, and in particular, the mismatch between skills and demand from companies. There is a huge gap, for example, between the supply and demand of developers. And we are trying to invest in online education to provide these skills, and therefore benefit both businesses and younger professionals or students who want to go into the IT career. So I think it's it's important that especially in venture capital, which is the riskiest segment of impact investment, we professionals share the experience and the information, because that's the real asset on which we can build an efficient and successful impact investment business worldwide.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, it's about getting that information to be able to act on. How do people reach out to you? What's the best way to contact you?
I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Twitter with my last name. I'm on Facebook and another 5 or 6 social media. So it's really easy to find me. If you type my last name in Google, you'll find more information and links that you will ever need. And my email is fabio.scacciavillani, so my first name dot my last name @gmail.com. So that's my private email. You can contact me there.
No, great. Thank you. And Nathaniel, what are your final thoughts? And how do people reach you?
Yeah, Gary, thanks for co-hosting with me. I really enjoyed myself on the other side. And I think that a lot is happening in Africa and emerging countries. And a lot of startups are coming out and growing. And now is the right time to make sure that there is this responsibility to your environment, to your society, and build up like part of a culture, to be much more responsible. And I know it's going to take some education, and there are many areas to impact, from environment to education to renewable energy. Everybody can have a fit. I mean, imagine if all companies in Africa and emerging countries had a 10% quota to social responsibility. It would be awesome, And I look forward to be part of projects that are socially responsible like that. I'm a part of a few of them. And if you have any ideas or anything you want to execute and you're in this part of the world, I can be reached on LinkedIn, most especially easily. LinkedIn, Oluwatomi Nathaniel Amida on LinkedIn. Just drop me a line, I accept, and we get talking and we get stuff done.
Yeah, thanks, Nathaniel. Amit, final thoughts, and how do people reach you?
Well, Look, I mean, Gary, there are a lot of investments happening in the impact space. So certainly the trend is very, very positive. Like I said, you're looking at excess of $700 billion in impact, which is not bad. I think as far as I'm concerned, the measurement is going to be how do you balance passion and empathy with the right commercial models that make passion and empathy sustainable. To me, that's the biggest challenge, because when I meet entrepreneurs, they're very passionate, they want to drive these causes, but on the business front of it and the commercial, economic, and feasibility side of it, I see a lot of struggle. But look, I mean, it's a great start, and it's going to kind of, this coming decade is going to be all about impact investment, and I'm sure there's going to be great, progress. One can reach me on LinkedIn, so I'm very, very active on LinkedIn. Otherwise, Google my name and you get to the website. So yeah, super easy to reach me.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and I want to thank everybody. It's great being the interim host today. My name's Gary Fowler, and we're all in this together. Over the last year, we've gone through this pandemic. We understand the frailties of our existence. I mean, when you can't even get toilet paper and you can't get meat in developed countries, we understand the vulnerabilities that we have. At the same time, we got to understand that we need to help each other and we need to do the right thing. And part of the right thing is making our planet a bit better, planning for the future. And it's not, a few years ago, it was just about talk, but now we see with global warming, we see about with population, we understand the pains. We need to go out and we need to make a dent in the universe. And we're right. There has to be a business around it, and there's got to be a win-win. But at the same time, we got to understand sometimes we got to lead with our heart. So my name's Gary Fowler. Reach out to me. You can get me on LinkedIn, Twitter. Let's go out there and do it. And it's great being here with my friends who I consider part of my family. So it's great to be part of Family Hour one more time. So thank you very much. Thanks to the entire VCTV team for making this possible. Look forward. We'll be back again tomorrow. Take care of yourselves. Be happy. See you later and stay safe. Bye-bye for now.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye, guys.
Have a great day.
Bye.
Yeah.